This math in minute video is on calculating the period intervals when graphing sine or cosine. So one of the challenges when graphing sine or cosine is to determine what our period intervals would be. So it's important to know the distance between here. It should be the same for each. We have a period that's pi over 2. We can divide that by 4. And then we'll know the distance between each of these intervals. And we can add it to each of the previous ones. So we're going to divide this by 4. We're going to say 1/4 over 1/4. Right? This is going to cancel, and this gives us pi over 8. So that's going to be our first interval, and that is also going to be what we add to each of the previous intervals. So we have pi over 8, so we have to add another pi over 8 to get the second interval. Pi over 8 plus pi over 8. What does that equal? That equals 2 pi over 8. And that can be simplified to 1 pi over 4. So that would be our second interval. So we're going to continue on. We're going to use it in this form because we want our denominators to be the same. So 2 pi over 8, which is the same thing as pi over 4, we're going to add what the distance of each interval is. So this is going to give us 3 pi over 8. So that's going to be our next label, 3 pi over 8. So 3 pi over 8, we're going to add the size of our interval, and we get 4 pi over 8, which is the same thing as pi over 2. And that'll be our next interval. And we can continue on. If we had another interval that we need, because sometimes we have a phase shift, so we might need to continue on, and we would do the same. I'm going to erase this. So we were at pi over 2, and we're adding the distance between the intervals, which is again pi over 8, and we would get, this can be rewritten as 4, I'll write it over here, down here, 4 pi over 8 plus pi over 8, and that would give us 5 pi over 8. So basically we're just finding what the distance is between the intervals. We did that by dividing it by 4, and then we continue to add that to each of the intervals. So in this case it was pi over 8. So let's look at another one. So let's start at the sine function. In order to determine what our period is, we need to know what the value of b is. And in this case it's 3. So period is defined by 2 pi over b. So that would be 2 pi over 3 is our period for this equation. So our period was 2 pi over 3. We're going to divide that by 4. So we're going to say 1/4 over 1/4 to cancel our denominator, which would equal 1. And we can simplify this to be a 2 and that a 1. So this would equal pi over 6. So that's going to be our first interval here, and also what we continue to add to each additional interval. So we have pi over 6, and we're going to add the distance of our intervals, which is another pi over 6. So this is going to equal 2 pi over 6. This can be simplified to pi over 3. So that is going to be our next interval. So pi over 3, again, we're going to use the common denominator of 6. We're going to keep our 2 pi over 6 because we want to add pi over 6, so we need the common denominator to make this easier. So this is going to be 3 pi over 6, which we can simplify to pi over 2. So that would be our third interval. We have pi over 2. Again, we're going to use our 3 pi over 6, which is the same thing, keeping our denominator equal to 6. This yields 4 pi over 6, which is the same as 2 pi over 3. And there you have it. That is the way to determine what the intervals are once you know the size of the period, divided by 4 if you're going to have 4 intervals, and thus continue to add the initial size, pi over 6, to each of the next intervals, and that's the way you can determine what your intervals are. Any math topics you would like me to cover, please leave in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, share, and we'll see you next time.